What exactly am I doing that qualifies as unruly behavior?
You're refusing a lawful order. Move now!
This is absurd. You haven't answered my question.
Step back from the entrance and lower your voice and disturb—
Are you being serious? This is a joke game!
Holloway's jaw tightens. Unruly behavior. Creating a public disturbance. Now turn around. The woman glances at the phones, then back at him. For the record, she says, her tone measured and clear, I haven't raised my voice. I haven't blocked any entrance. I'm standing on a public sidewalk, asking you to clarify the legal basis for your order. Travis Bennett, the cafe manager, stands frozen in the doorway, visibly uncomfortable. Marcus Hill, a witness in a charcoal suit, mutters to someone beside him. This doesn't look right. Officer Ryan Mercer, Holloway's backup, shifts his weight near the curb but says nothing. The radio crackles. Dispatcher Heather Lang's voice breaks through. Unit 12. Status? Holloway ignores it. His eyes are locked on the woman. Last warning, hands behind your back. She exhales slowly, deliberately. Officer Holloway, she says, reading his name tag with precision, I am complying under protest. I am not resisting. I want your badge number on record. The handcuffs click closed around her wrists. The crowd gasps, phones steady. And in that moment, a federal prosecutor becomes a statistic, and a lawsuit waiting to happen. Aaliyah Monroe's alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., the same as it did every morning. She reached over, tapped the screen, and sat up in the quiet darkness of her apartment. No snooze button, no hesitation. That was how she had trained herself since law school. Every minute counted. By 6:15, she was at her kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, her laptop open, and 3 legal files spread out in front of her. The case was simple on paper. A man named Thomas Reed had been stopped by police while walking home from work. The officers said he matched the description of a robbery suspect. Thomas said he showed them his work ID and explained where he was going. They arrested him anyway. During the arrest, one officer's knee pressed into his back for nearly 4 minutes while Thomas begged to breathe. The whole thing was caught on a bystander's phone. Now, 2 years later, Aaliyah was prosecuting those officers in federal court for violating Thomas Reed's civil rights. The trial was set to begin in 3 days. She had spent months preparing. Every witness interview, every frame of video, every line of her opening statement. She knew the defense would argue that the officers were just doing their job. She knew they would say Thomas should have cooperated more. She had heard it all before. Aaliyah clicked through her notes one more time, her eyes scanning each page with the same focus she brought to everything. Her mother used to say she'd been serious even as a child. While other kids played, Aaliyah asked questions. Why do some people get treated differently? Why do the rules change depending on who you are? Her mother, who cleaned office buildings at night and worked at a grocery store during the day, always gave the same answer. Because the world isn't fair, baby. But that doesn't mean you stop trying to make it fair. That was why Aaliyah chose law. Not for the money, though the private firms had offered plenty. Not for the status, though her name was now known in legal circles across the city. She chose it because she believed in something simple. The law protects everyone, or it protects no one. There was no in-between. She had grown up in Atlanta, the daughter of a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep them in a decent school district. Aaliyah earned a full scholarship to college, then another to Howard Law. She finished near the top of her class. After that, she clerked for a federal judge who taught her that precision mattered. One word in the wrong place could change the outcome of a case. One missed detail could let someone walk free or send someone to prison. When Aaliyah joined the U.S. Attorney's Office, her colleagues quickly learned what kind of lawyer she was. Meticulous, unflinching. She didn't yell in court. She didn't need to. Her arguments were so tightly built that there was no room for doubt. Defense attorneys hated going up against her. Judges respected her. And the people she represented, people like Thomas Reed, trusted her because she never made promises she couldn't keep. At 1:30 p.m., Aaliyah closed her laptop and packed her briefcase. She was meeting Priya Desai, another prosecutor from the DOJ, at Bennett's Corner Cafe. They needed to go over trial strategy one more time before the weekend. Priya was sharp and thoughtful. The kind of colleague who asked the right questions and caught the things others missed. Aaliyah arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. She always did. She ordered an iced coffee, found a table outside under the shade of a large umbrella, and set her briefcase down beside her. The weather was warm but not too hot. The sidewalk was busy with people coming and going. She pulled out her phone and checked her messages. One missed call from Priya. A text. Running 10 min late, sorry. Aaliyah typed back quickly, no problem, I'm outside. She took a sip of her coffee and leaned back in her chair. The cafe was in the heart of the business district, surrounded by tall office buildings and government offices. Across the street she could see people in suits walking quickly, briefcases in hand, phones pressed to their ears. This was her world now, a world of deadlines and courtrooms and cases that mattered. Her phone buzzed. It was her boss, the lead attorney on the Reed case. She answered. Aaliyah, quick question about the witness list, he said. His voice was calm but direct. Did you confirm Dr. Patterson for Friday? Yes, Aaliyah said. He'll be there at 9 a.m. I spoke to him yesterday. Good, and you're ready for cross-examination if they bring up the prior incident? I am, she said. I've reviewed every detail. They won't catch me off guard. I know they won't, he said. That's why you're on this case. They talked for another few minutes about courtroom logistics and witness prep. When the call ended, Aaliyah set her phone down and looked around. The cafe was getting busier. A group of college students sat at a nearby table, laughing over something on one of their phones. A man in a business suit stood at the corner, waiting for the light to change. Everything felt normal, routine. Aaliyah had no idea that in less than an hour, her entire day would change. Officer Jake Holloway pulled his patrol car into the parking lot at 1:58 p.m., already annoyed. The dispatch call had come in 12 minutes earlier. Noise complaint. Loud arguing near Bennett's Corner Cafe. Someone said it was getting out of hand. Holloway didn't like noise complaints. They were messy. People argued over stupid things, then got upset when the police showed up. But a call was a call, and he had learned a long time ago that the best way to handle any situation was simple. Control the scene. Don't let them question you. He stepped out of the car and adjusted his belt. The sun was bright, the sidewalk crowded with the usual lunch hour traffic. He scanned the area quickly, looking for anything out of place. His eyes landed on a woman sitting outside the cafe, talking on her phone. She was dressed nicely, professional, but she was the only person who seemed settled in one spot. Holloway's father had been a precinct captain for 23 years. He used to tell Jake the same thing over and over when he was growing up. Authority isn't something you ask for, son. It's something you take. The moment you let someone question you, you've already lost. Jake believed that. He had been on the force for 12 years now. Decorated twice. Commendations for quick response and strong arrests. He knew how to handle himself. He knew how to read a situation. And right now, his gut told him that the woman on the phone was involved. He walked toward her, his hand resting casually on his belt near his radio. She didn't look up. That bothered him. Most people saw a uniform and straightened up. This woman just kept talking. Holloway had a pattern, though he would never admit it. When someone pushed back, even a little, he used the same tools. Vague charges, disturbing the peace, unruly behavior, obstruction. The words were broad enough to cover almost anything, and they put the other person on the defensive. It worked most of the time. There had been complaints over the years. A few civilians had filed reports saying he was too aggressive, too quick to escalate. Internal Affairs had reviewed them, but nothing ever stuck. The notes in his file were soft. Assertive, needs improvement with de-escalation. No one ever followed up, no one ever made him change. Holloway reached the table where the woman sat. He stopped a few feet away and cleared his throat. She glanced up briefly, then went back to her call. That was a mistake. Ma'am, Holloway said, his voice firm, I need you to move along. The woman held up one finger, signaling for him to wait. She was still talking into the phone. Something about a witness list and court dates. Holloway's jaw tightened. He didn't like being ignored. He stepped closer. Ma'am, he said again, louder this time. I'm going to need you to end that call and move along. The woman finally looked at him fully. Her expression was calm, almost neutral. She said something into the phone, then lowered it slightly. Officer, can I ask why? She said. Her voice was polite but direct. Holloway didn't like the question. It felt like a challenge. There's been a complaint about noise in this area. You need to leave. The woman frowned slightly. I'm sitting outside a cafe. I ordered coffee. I'm waiting for a colleague. What law am I breaking? That question hung in the air. Holloway felt his chest tighten. Around them, a few people had started to slow down, watching. Someone nearby pulled out a phone. Holloway hated that. He hated being watched. He hated the feeling that he had to explain himself. You're being unruly, he said, the words coming out sharper than he intended. The woman blinked. Unruly? She gestured to the table. I'm sitting here quietly. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't disturbed anyone. Holloway's hand moved toward his cuffs. He could feel the situation slipping. His father's voice echoed in his head. Don't let them question you. Take control. Ma'am, this is your last warning. Step away from the table and move along, or you'll be placed under arrest. The woman stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood slowly, carefully, and set her phone down on the table. Her briefcase was by her feet. She didn't reach for it. Officer, she said, her voice steady, I'm complying, but I need you to understand that I am not breaking any law. I'm asking you to clarify what legal basis you have for ordering me to leave. Holloway's patience snapped. He reached for her arm. Turn around, he said, hands behind your back. And just like that, the line was crossed. The crowd around them grew quickly. It always did when something started to go wrong. People had a sense for it, like animals before a storm. They slowed their steps, they turned their heads, they pulled out their phones. Holloway didn't care. Or at least, he told himself he didn't. He had done this 100 times. Civilian resisting a lawful order. That was all this was. The woman turned around slowly, just like he told her to. But she kept talking. For the record, she said, her voice clear and measured, I am not resisting. I have not raised my voice. I have not blocked any entrance. I am standing on a public sidewalk asking you to clarify the legal basis for this detention. Holloway's hands moved to his cuffs. You're being detained for unruly behavior and creating a disturbance. What disturbance? She asked. Please be specific. Holloway felt heat rising in his chest. He glanced around. The phones were everywhere now. A young woman in a college sweatshirt held hers up, the red recording dot visible. An older man in a business suit stood near the curb, watching with his arms crossed. The cafe manager, a guy named Travis, stood in the doorway looking uncomfortable. Ma'am, you need to stop talking and put your hands behind your back. The woman exhaled slowly. She placed her hands behind her back without resistance. Officer Holloway, she said, reading his name tag, I'm complying under protest. I am not resisting. I would like your badge number for the record. Holloway ignored her. He pulled the cuffs from his belt and clicked them around her wrists. The sound was sharp, metallic. The crowd gasped. Travis, the cafe manager, stepped forward. Officer, she didn't do anything. She's just been sitting here waiting for someone. Holloway turned to him, his voice hard. Step back, sir. This is an active arrest. Travis hesitated, then stepped back. Officer Ryan Mercer pulled up in his patrol car just then, parking behind Holloway's vehicle. He got out quickly, his eyes scanning the scene. Mercer was younger, only 4 years on the force. He looked uneasy. Jake, what's going on? Mercer asked quietly. Unruly behavior, Holloway said. She refused a lawful order. Mercer glanced at the woman, then at the crowd. He didn't say anything, but his face showed doubt. The woman turned her head slightly, looking at the phone's recording. My name is Aaliyah Monroe, she said clearly. I am a senior federal prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I am being unlawfully detained. Please keep recording. Holloway's stomach dropped for just a second. Then he shook it off. People lied all the time. They claimed to be lawyers, doctors, politicians, anything to get out of trouble. Sure you are, he muttered. He guided her toward the patrol car, his hand on her arm. She didn't pull away. She didn't fight. She just walked, calm and steady, like she was heading into a courtroom instead of the back of a police cruiser. Mercer opened the door. Holloway helped her inside, then shut it firmly. Through the window, Aaliyah sat perfectly still, her eyes forward. Around them, the crowd murmured. Phones stayed raised. Nia Franklin, the college student, zoomed in on the police car, capturing every detail. Marcus Hill, the man in the suit, shook his head and muttered to the person next to him. This doesn't look right. Holloway walked back to his car and got in. Mercer climbed into the passenger seat. The radio crackled. Unit 12, status, came the voice of dispatcher Heather Lang. Holloway picked up the radio. 1 in custody. Unruly behavior. Transporting to precinct. Copy that. Mercer glanced back at Aaliyah through the partition. Jake, she really didn't do anything. She was just sitting there. Holloway's jaw clenched. She argued with a lawful order. That's enough. Mercer didn't respond. He just looked out the window as Holloway pulled into traffic. Behind them, the videos were already uploading. The patrol car moved through the downtown streets, weaving between buses and delivery trucks. Inside, the air conditioning hummed quietly. The partition between the front and back seat was thick plastic, scratched and cloudy from years of use. Aaliyah sat in the back, her hands cuffed behind her. The metal was tight, pressing into her wrists. She didn't try to adjust them. She knew better. Any movement could be written up as resistance. Instead, she focused. She noted the time on the dashboard clock, 2:47 p.m. She noted the route they were taking. She noted that neither officer had read her Miranda rights. She noted that Holloway had never told her why she was being arrested beyond the vague phrase, unruly behavior. Every detail mattered. She had built entire cases on details like these. In the front seat, Mercer shifted uncomfortably. He glanced at Holloway, then back at the road. Finally, he spoke. Jake, she didn't really... She was disruptive, Holloway cut him off. His voice was firm, like he was trying to convince himself as much as Mercer. She argued with a lawful order. That's enough. Mercer hesitated, but she wasn't loud. She wasn't blocking anything. She was just sitting there. Holloway's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She questioned my authority in front of a crowd. That makes it disruptive. Mercer didn't respond. He just looked out the window. The radio crackled again. Heather Lang's voice came through. Unit 12. Confirm nature of arrest? Holloway picked up the radio. Unruly behavior. Subject refused to comply with lawful order. Copy. Aaliyah listened to every word. She would remember all of it. The exact phrasing, the timestamps, the tone. She had cross-examined officers on stand who thought they were being careful. They never were. Holloway pulled the car into the precinct lot and parked near the side entrance. He got out first, then opened the back door. Aaliyah stepped out carefully, her movements slow and deliberate. This way, Holloway said, guiding her toward the building. As they walked, Aaliyah spoke clearly. Officer Holloway, I am requesting that you verify my credentials before processing me. I have federal identification in my briefcase. Holloway didn't even look at her. We'll deal with that inside. They entered through a heavy metal door that buzzed open automatically. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and old coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and bright. The floor was polished concrete and their footsteps echoed. At the booking desk, Officer Erica Vaughn looked up from her computer. She was in her mid-30s, efficient and professional. She glanced at Aaliyah, then at Holloway. What do we have? Vaughn asked. Unruly behavior, Holloway said. Refused lawful order. Vaughn started typing. Name? Aaliyah spoke before Holloway could. Aaliyah Monroe. I'm a Senior Federal Prosecutor with the U.S. Attorney's Office, Civil Rights Division. I'm requesting that you verify my credentials before continuing with this process. Holloway let out a short laugh. Sure you are. Process her. Vaughn hesitated. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. She looked at Aaliyah more closely, then at Holloway. Did you check her ID? Vaughn asked. She's lying, Holloway said. Just process her. Vaughn's lips pressed together, but she went back to typing. Aaliyah watched her carefully. She saw the hesitation. She saw the doubt, but she also saw Vaughn follow orders. I'm requesting to speak to a supervisor, Aaliyah said. Not right now, Holloway said. I'm requesting to make a phone call. You'll get your call after processing. Aaliyah took a slow breath. She knew what was happening. She had seen it in depositions, in case files, in witness statements. Had officers who made a mistake and then doubled down because admitting error felt worse than pushing forward. Vaughn finished the intake form and stood. This way. Aaliyah was led down another hallway to a holding area. The room was small with benches along the walls and a camera in the corner. 2 other people sat there already. A woman with her head in her hands, a man staring blankly at the floor. Aaliyah sat down on the bench. The handcuffs were finally removed. She flexed her wrists once, feeling the blood flow return. Time slowed. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The smell of disinfectant was stronger here. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rang. Someone laughed. Aaliyah closed her eyes and began organizing everything in her mind. The time, the witnesses, the lack of Miranda warning, the refusal to verify her ID, the vague charge, the escalation. This was a case now. She just happened to be in the middle of it. Outside the precinct, the videos were spreading faster than anyone inside realized. Nia Franklin had posted hers first, adding a caption that was short and direct. Federal prosecutor arrested for asking a question. The video started with Holloway standing over Aaliyah, his voice sharp. It captured her calm response. It captured the moment she identified herself. It captured the handcuffs clicking into place while she repeated, "I am not resisting." Within 20 minutes, the video had 5,000 views. Within an hour, 50,000. Comments flooded in. Wait, is she actually a prosecutor? This is insane. She literally did nothing. That cop is about to regret his entire life. Someone else posted a longer video from a different angle. This one showed the whole confrontation from the beginning. Aaliyah sitting at the cafe, Holloway approaching, her polite questions, his escalation, the crowd's reaction. Then someone found her name in a public court record. A case she had argued 6 months earlier. United States v. Officer Derek Mills. Excessive force. She had won. The comment section exploded. She prosecutes the cops and they just arrested her for nothing. This is about to go very badly for that officer. I need updates on this immediately. The videos kept spreading. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, Facebook groups, local news outlets started picking it up. Reporters began making calls. Inside the precinct, none of this had reached the officers yet. They were still going through the motions. Paperwork, processing, routine. But the clock was ticking. Back in the holding cell, Aaliyah sat with her hands folded in her lap. She had stopped trying to explain. There was no point. The system had its rhythm, and once you were inside it, you had to let it play out. She thought about Thomas Reed, the man whose case she was preparing for trial. She thought about how he must have felt in a moment like this. Powerless, invisible. Treated like a problem instead of a person. She understood it now, in a way she hadn't before. Down the hall, Calvin Brooks, a public defender, walked past the holding area on his way to meet a client. He glanced through the small window in the door and saw Aaliyah sitting there. Something about her face seemed familiar. He paused, trying to place her. Then it clicked. He had seen her in court. Not as a defendant. As a prosecutor. She had argued a case against one of his colleagues. She had been sharp, precise, impossible to rattle. Calvin's eyes widened. He looked at the intake sheet posted outside the door. Monroe, Aaliyah. Unruly behavior. No way, he muttered under his breath. He kept walking, but his mind was racing. If that was who he thought it was, someone had made a very, very big mistake. At 5 p.m., the shift changed. Officers who had been on duty since morning started heading out. New officers arrived, fresh and alert, ready for the evening. One of them was Sergeant Anthony Delgado. Delgado was 42 years old and had been with the department for 23 years. He had seen everything. Bad arrests, good arrests, arrests that should never have happened. He had learned to spot the difference. He walked into the precinct, nodded to a few colleagues, and headed straight for the booking desk. Vaughn was still there, finishing up her shift. "Anything I should know about?" Delgado asked. Vaughn hesitated. "There's one that feels off." Delgado raised an eyebrow. "Off how?" Vaughn pulled up the intake file on her computer. "Woman arrested this afternoon. Unruly behavior. Officer Holloway brought her in." Delgado leaned over and looked at the screen. "What's off about it?" "She says she's a federal prosecutor," Vaughn said quietly. "Holloway didn't believe her. Told me to process her anyway." Delgado went still. "Did anyone check?" Vaughn shook her head. "He said she was lying." Delgado's jaw tightened. He looked at the name on the screen. Aaliyah Monroe. "Where is she now?" he asked. "Holding cell B." Delgado walked quickly down the hall. He reached the holding area and looked through the window. Aaliyah sat on the bench, perfectly still, her posture straight, her expression calm. Delgado had been doing this long enough to recognize composure under pressure. This woman wasn't angry. She wasn't scared. She was waiting. He turned to Vaughn, who had followed him. "Pull her ID, run her name through the federal database. Do it now." Vaughn nodded and hurried back to her desk. Delgado stood there, staring through the window, a bad feeling settling in his gut. 3 minutes later, Vaughn called him over. Her face was pale. "Sarge, you need to see this." Delgado walked over and looked at the screen. The database had returned a match. Aaliyah Monroe, Assistant U.S. Attorney, Civil Rights Division. Active clearance. Authorized. Delgado closed his eyes and let out a long breath. "Get Captain Whitaker on the phone," he said quietly. "Right now." Captain Brian Whitaker was in his office reviewing budget reports when his phone rang. He saw Delgado's name on the screen and answered immediately. "What is it, Tony?" "We have a problem, sir," Delgado said. His voice was tight, controlled, a big one. Whitaker set down his pen. "Talk to me." "Officer Holloway arrested a woman this afternoon for unruly behavior. She told him she was a federal prosecutor. He didn't believe her, didn't check her ID, brought her in anyway." Whitaker felt his stomach drop. "And? I just ran her credentials. She's telling the truth. Assistant U.S. Attorney, Civil Rights Division." There was a long silence. "Are you telling me," Whitaker said slowly, "that we have a senior federal prosecutor sitting in a holding cell right now?" "Yes, sir." Whitaker stood up so fast his chair rolled backward. "Get her out, now, and get Holloway in my office." "Already on it, sir." Whitaker hung up and pressed his hands against his desk. His mind was racing. A federal prosecutor, arrested for nothing, held for hours. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a disaster. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. Down in the holding area, Delgado opened the door himself. Aaliyah looked up. "Miss Monroe," Delgado said, his voice respectful. "I'm Sergeant Delgado. I apologize for the delay. We've verified your credentials. You should not have been arrested. You're being released immediately." Aaliyah stood slowly. "I'll need copies of the arrest report, the incident report, and all body camera footage from Officer Holloway and Officer Mercer." Delgado nodded. "You'll have them. I'll also need the names and badge numbers of everyone involved." "You'll have that too." Aaliyah walked out of the holding cell, her steps steady. Delgado walked beside her, his face serious. As they reached the main hallway, Holloway appeared walking toward them. He stopped when he saw Aaliyah out of the cell. "What's going on?" Holloway asked. Delgado turned to him, his voice cold. "You arrested a federal prosecutor, Jake, a senior attorney from the Civil Rights Division." Holloway's face went pale. "She said that, but I thought—" "You didn't check," Delgado said. "You assumed, and now we're all going to deal with the consequences." Captain Whitaker appeared at the end of the hall. He walked toward them, his expression hard. "Miss Monroe," Whitaker said. "I'm Captain Whitaker. On behalf of the department, I want to assure you that we will be looking into this matter thoroughly." Aaliyah looked at him. Her face was calm, but her eyes were sharp. "Captain, I'll be filing a formal complaint. I'll also be requesting all documentation related to this arrest." "You'll have full cooperation," Whitaker said. "Good," Aaliyah said. She turned to Delgado. "Can I leave now?" "Yes, ma'am." Aaliyah walked toward the exit. As she passed Holloway, she didn't look at him. She didn't need to. The door closed behind her, and the precinct fell silent. Whitaker turned to Holloway. "My office, now." Outside, the sun was setting. Aaliyah stood on the sidewalk and pulled out her phone. She had 17 missed calls, dozens of texts. Her inbox was full. One text was from Priya. "Are you okay? I saw the video." Aaliyah took a breath and typed back. "I'm fine. I'll call you soon." She opened her email and started a new message to her supervisor. The subject line was simple: "Incident report, unlawful arrest." She began typing. By the time the sun fully set, the videos had gone viral. Millions of views, thousands of shares. News outlets were running the story with headlines that made Whitaker's blood pressure spike every time he saw them. Federal prosecutor arrested for asking a question. DOJ attorney handcuffed outside cafe, no charges filed. Cop arrests woman for unruly behavior, she prosecutes police misconduct. The legal community erupted. Lawyers who knew Aaliyah started posting, colleagues from the DOJ, judges she had appeared before. Defense attorneys who respected her, even when they lost to her. One tweet from a prominent civil rights attorney went viral on its own. "Aaliyah Monroe is one of the most respected federal prosecutors in the country. If this can happen to her, imagine what happens to people without her credentials." The comment section became a battleground. Some people defended the police, most did not. Inside the precinct, Holloway sat in Whitaker's office. The captain stood behind his desk, arms crossed, his face a mask of controlled anger. Do you understand what you've done? Whitaker asked. Holloway's throat was dry. Sir, I thought she was just... You thought wrong, Whitaker cut him off. You arrested a senior federal prosecutor, a woman who spends her career prosecuting officers for misconduct, and you gave her a textbook example of exactly what she fights against. Holloway looked down at his hands. You didn't check her ID, Whitaker continued. You didn't verify her story. You escalated a situation that didn't need to escalate, and now we have video evidence of all of it. I was responding to a noise complaint, Holloway said weakly. There was no noise, Whitaker said. We checked. The complaint was about two men arguing a block away. You went to the wrong location, and instead of admitting that, you made it worse. Holloway said nothing. Whitaker sat down heavily. You're suspended. Effective immediately. Turn in your badge and your weapon. Holloway's head snapped up. Captain, this isn't a discussion, Whitaker said. Internal Affairs will be investigating. If they find what I think they'll find, you're done. Holloway stood slowly. His hands shook as he unclipped his badge and set it on the desk. His service weapon followed. He walked out without another word. 72 hours later, Aaliyah filed her lawsuit. The complaint was 53 pages long. Every paragraph was precise. Every claim was supported by evidence. Timestamps, witness statements, body camera footage, legal precedent. The defendants were listed clearly. Officer Jake Holloway, Officer Ryan Mercer, the City Police Department. The claims were devastating. Unlawful arrest, Fourth Amendment violation, retaliation for exercising First Amendment rights, violation of civil rights under 42 U.S.C. page 1983. The complaint cited case law that Aaliyah had argued herself in other trials. It referenced training materials she had written. It quoted from the body camera footage word for word. It was a masterpiece of legal writing, and it was impossible to defend against. Within hours of filing, the local news picked it up. Then the national news. Legal analysts appeared on television breaking down the case. Most of them reached the same conclusion. The city was going to lose. Detective Grant Hollowell from Internal Affairs was assigned to investigate. He was a veteran investigator, 20 years on the job, known for being thorough and fair. He started with the body camera footage. He watched it 3 times. Then he watched the witness videos. Then he read the dispatch logs. The timeline didn't lie. There was no disturbance, no raised voice, no obstruction. Aaliyah had been sitting at a cafe, waiting for a colleague. Holloway had approached her based on a complaint that wasn't even about her. When she asked questions, he arrested her. Hollowell pulled Holloway's personnel file. He found 3 prior complaints, all from civilians, all dismissed as unsubstantiated. He read the notes from supervisors. Assertive, needs improvement with de-escalation. He read the incident reports from those complaints. The language was almost identical to what Holloway had written about Aaliyah. Subject refused to comply. Subject was disruptive. It was a pattern, and this time the pattern had caught up with him. Hollowell wrote his report. It took him 4 days. When he finished, he handed it to Whitaker. The captain read it in silence. When he was done, he looked up. Recommendation? Whitaker asked. Termination, Hollowell said. He violated policy, he violated her rights, and the evidence is clear. Whitaker nodded. I agree. 3 weeks after the arrest, Jake Holloway received a letter. It was short and formal. After a thorough investigation by Internal Affairs, your employment with the City Police Department is terminated, effective immediately. This decision is based on violations of department policy, failure to follow procedure, and conduct unbecoming an officer. Holloway read it twice. Then he set it down and stared at the wall. His career was over. He filed an appeal. It was denied within a week. The evidence was too strong, the video too clear. He was done. 6 months later, the city settled. The terms were announced in a brief press release. The city would pay Aaliyah Monroe $500,000. In addition, the city agreed to a consent decree that included sweeping reforms. All officers would receive mandatory training on constitutional rights and de-escalation. Body camera footage would be reviewed in cases involving arrests near federal buildings. Supervisors would be required to verify credentials before processing anyone claiming to be a government employee. Disciplinary procedures would be updated to ensure complaints were investigated fully. The settlement included no admission of wrongdoing, but everyone knew what it meant. Aaliyah accepted the settlement quietly. She didn't give interviews, she didn't celebrate, she simply moved forward. Most of the money was donated. She gave it to a legal defense fund for people who had been wrongfully arrested but didn't have the resources to fight back. She gave it to community organizations that trained people on their rights. She gave it to programs she had recommended in meetings years ago that had gone nowhere. The settlement was justice. But it wasn't complete. It never could be. The following Monday, Aaliyah returned to Bennett's Corner Cafe. She walked in just after noon, ordered an iced coffee, and sat at the same table where she had been arrested. The sun was bright. The sidewalk was busy. Everything looked the same. Travis, the cafe manager, saw her and walked over. He set her coffee down carefully. "Miss Monroe," he said, "it's good to see you back." Aaliyah nodded. "Thank you, Travis." He hesitated, then spoke quietly. "I'm sorry I didn't do more that day." Aaliyah looked at him. "You spoke up. That's more than most people do." Travis nodded and walked back inside. A few minutes later, Nia Franklin walked past. The college student who had recorded the arrest. She saw Aaliyah and stopped. "Hi," Nia said. "Hi," Aaliyah said. "I'm glad you're okay," Nia said. "I'm glad the video helped." "It did," Aaliyah said. "Thank you for recording." Nia smiled and walked on. Aaliyah sat there for a long time, sipping her coffee, watching people pass by. She thought about Thomas Reed, whose trial had ended with a guilty verdict for the officers involved. She thought about the reforms the city had agreed to. She thought about the calls and emails she had received from people thanking her, people she had never met. Justice had moved, not cleanly, not quickly, but it had moved. She finished her coffee, picked up her briefcase, and walked back to work. The fight wasn't over. It never was. But today, at least, there had been a step forward. And that was enough.